You know what? My sister said that I should watch the horror side of Reddit. I love horror. And I love folklore. And this is like, you know, what is the scariest, creepiest things you've ever seen at work? The creepiest thing is, like, when, like, one of my relatives was stalking me through the night, and, in my cousin's house. It was a little bit spooky because I thought someone was in the house, but they weren't, and, you know, yada yada yada. But apparently there's a lot more spooky things out there, like a bunch of like sightings and crap and stuff. I don't know. But I remember like once I was rolling up with a four-wheeler to the edge of my woods, and it was like 6 to 7 in the afternoon. There was a sunset. It wasn't like a very dim sunset. It was a pretty bright sunset. But even though there was a sunset, the woods where I was completely pitch black. I refuse. I'm like, you know what? No, I'm not. Like, I was about to ride to the woods, have fun with my sister. I'm like, hell no, I am not going in there. Like, I don't want to be like paranoid, but I don't want to know. I don't want to know if there's something in there. Like, there could be freaking like the rake or some poltergeist slash Wendigo. And yes, I know I might be paranoid, but you know what? Like, I'm not trying to be. Not trying to go out on a whim. My sister has told me that she's personally seen a lot of ghosts. I can't claim these are true, but I cannot claim these are false. So the proof that they do exist, in my opinion, is pending. But if I was forced to say yes or no, if I think ghosts are real, I think they're real. Now, I'm not saying, you know, everything has an origin. You know, the aliens had an origin. And, like the story of things, like the aliens had an origin. Somebody had to think about it, or at least make it up. So how come people are still focused on ghosts? Is that they probably do exist. Now, I have a theory or hypothesis. It's maybe ghosts are trapped in our dimension, or like you know, Rayce and Apex. Not trying to link it to video games, but let's just say what if, like, you know, the not Wraiths, but the ghosts are like in our dimension. Like, they're in a dimension. They can see us. They can all see us, but they can barely talk. If they talk, they can't. You know, we can barely hear them, and we you know, they could probably see us. Like, you know, they walk around like humans. They can see us, but we can't see them sometimes. I don't know. Let's play this video. I only got to the part where there was bells ringing and there's people singing. I'm like, and you know what? I'm sorry. I'm not going in my woods at night without a shotgun, an AK-47, or like an M4 or AR-15. Like, I don't mean to be a wuss. I don't mean to be weird, but you know what? Call me crazy, but I generally do think that there's some. I'm not gonna say there's something in my woods, but I think there's a monster in our woods. Deadass. I mean, if you think about it, a few months ago, we caught a mountain lion or so, like a tiger or something, going past the camera. And that's where I'm like, no. I have a shotgun. So one day I plan on going in some woods or even natural preserves, like some like huge woods, bringing a team, one with a shotgun, an AR, maybe an AR-15, I don't know, at least an M16 of like fully decked guns, like fully decked M4s, and maybe even I could wield a Chris Vector. That'd be a good idea to go into the woods with one, a Chris Vector, 35 rounds per second. Whatever, let's just hear this.
Lies from B-Billy. I used to work at a Boy Scout summer camp. Every week, I had to take a big group of campers to a secluded spot for their wilderness survival badge, where they had to build a shelter out of sticks, leaves, etc. to sleep in overnight. The spot was only about a half-mile away from the main camp, but we took them on a circuitous route that made it seem really secluded. Anyways, on this one night, all the campers had made their shelters, we cooked dinner, and we were all just sitting around the campfire. It was getting late, maybe 11 o'clock, so I sent all the campers to their shelters for the night and started cleaning out the fire. That's when we heard in the distance what sounded like church bells. They were pretty faint, but myself and
That's
So
creepy.
the singing started. It was too faint to hear the words, but it sounded like church choir music, but a lot of people and a lot more enthusiastic. Also, it was almost midnight at this point. The singing went on for well over an hour, sometimes quieting down until we almost couldn't hear it. Sometimes getting so loud we thought it was getting closer. All the campers were super creeped out, but I lied to them, telling them there was a church service going on in camp and that there was nothing to be scared of. Eventually, at almost 1 a.m., the singing stopped. I found out a few days later that there had been a large KKK rally only a few miles away that night, and that's what we heard. I came into this expecting some kind of ghost story.
Oh my god, that's creepy as hell. The KKK. That is creepy as hell. Like, there's a lot of creepy things on this earth. And finding slash witnessing in any form, hearing or seeing a KKK rally, oh my god, that has to be some of the scariest crap I've ever seen. For those who don't know, the KKK were a group in America. They still exist. But they would terrorize and kill Jews and black men. Not black men. They'd kill blacks, Jews, they'd kill Islamics, Japanese. If you and when the KKK was at large, if you weren't like me, if you weren't a white American or a white, if you weren't a white man or a white woman, you were going to get freaking terrorized. Like, they would burn their houses, kill their children and all that stuff. They did, next to the Nazis, they are some of the most deplorable people. Now that is creepy, dude. That would make me want to bring a gun. And remember, back then, there used to be I know it's weird, I read up on it, because you know what? To eliminate an enemy, you have to know them better. And there's at least 6 million KKK members active at the peak. 6 million. That's a lot of people, especially back in the 19-somethings, or 1800s or 1900s. That is scary, dude. I can't say how scary it is, dude. That is so creepy.
Way scarier. Can you imagine if one of the kids went to go check that out and was found by the rally members? That could have ended very badly. Our next reply is from Do Not Engage With Me. I used to work in the Gulf of Mexico.
That's that group, the KKK, they claim to be good and they want to purge evil, but they don't. They actually spread it. And they're creepy, dude. There's something right out of a goddamn horror movie. They wear these white cloaks with hoods and eye holes and mouth holes, and there are hordes of them. And if they were to catch one person spying on them, that is instant death. You would either get lynched, you get hanged, you would, like, if one of them caught you, God have mercy on your soul. That's all I have to say. And the bad thing about these members is that you don't know who they are. They could be your mechanic. They could be your wife. They could be your teacher. They could be your best friend. The truth is, it's hard to find them. They are secret, and they have this language I hear that say, like, blah blah blah, are you a clan member? Are you a clan mate? Yes, I am. No, I'm not. And they secretly communicate with each other, and it's really weird. I read the Wikipedia a lot because I wanted to learn more about them and how they communicate in case I was ever put into a scenario. Not that I ever joined them. I would never. I hate them. I oppose them. But if, I can understand my enemy, like General Thrawn.
On an oil rig for years, and it may not exactly be creepy, but I found it really unsettling. In deep, open water, the water itself is really clear. So everyone can plainly see all the tuna and barracudas hanging around the rig, waiting for the onboard cook to throw off whatever food waste he needs to. Every once in a while, a huge great white shark would swim up from underneath and snatch a tuna, and it really took less than a second. They're really scary. Our next reply is from Goobers Please Know. I've worked in Canada's north for a few years now in oil and gas.
Oh,
It's
Canada's.
pretty creepy when, during the night shift, you realize a moose has just been standing at the tree line of a snowy forest in the dead of night, hundreds of kilometers away from anything is pretty spooky.
I hate those KKK members. That they're horrible people. They want to kill everyone that isn't white.
Beneath that, Windshield 11 says, might as well be in space. And Karashap replies, in space, bears can't kill you, so it's worse. Our next flash from Snow Cabbage. I used to be a delivery driver, which doesn't sound very remote because it isn't. However, I did have to deliver to some pretty remote places. One time, I delivered to a trailer park just barely inside of our designated delivery zone, and it was very dark and poorly lit. I leave my car running and keep the headlights and inside lights on to go deliver the pizza. Upon returning to my car, I sit down in the driver's seat and look up to see a creepy old man standing less than 3 feet from the side.
Oh my god.
He was just staring.
I'm not trying to be mean, but I would get my gun. That's why I'm gonna get concealed carry.
When I turned around, the man was standing in the middle of the road, so I freaked out for a second before speeding around him, only to watch him attempt to chase my car out of the trailer park.
Oh.
I put my 2 weeks notice after that. And then, beneath that, the road is life has a similar story. You reminded me of something creepy that happened to me. I also used to be a delivery driver, but for a supermarket in the UK. A lot of our customers were in the middle of nowhere, and my last delivery of the night was a new customer I'd never been to before. I was already running late from all my previous deliveries, and I was still trying to find this house at 10:30 p.m., even though my shift was supposed to finish at 10 p.m. I'm driving around the narrowest of country roads with nothing surrounding me but dark fields and hedgerows, looking for anything that might be a driveway. I hadn't seen another car or person for miles. Then, all of a sudden, I hear a loud thud on the side of my van, like something was thrown at it. There were no trees or anything else around for something to fall from. I remember it specifically hitting the side of my car. I looked in my mirrors and out the window, but there was nothing around me. Then it happened again. Another thud on the side of my van. I drove back to the supermarket so fast and told my manager that I couldn't find the place. I spent 30 minutes looking for it, to be fair. It turns out there was no house at that address. Our next reply is from Amiru. I was on a boat sitting on anchor in a secluded bay in the early hours in southeast Alaska a few years ago. I stepped outside for a smoke, and all of a sudden I heard the most horrific sounds of a wild animal being murdered by another wild animal. It went on for probably 10 minutes. I know it's just nature, but man, I can still hear that sound in my brain, and it haunts me. Have you ever noticed during nature documentaries that when an animal is hunting another animal, they usually play music instead of the live audio? This is why. Our next reply is from LS1C. I was the creepy occurrence. I live on a ranch off a quiet dirt road. Our distant neighbors, the nearest house is about 1 mile away as the crow flies, have had issues with people stealing things out of their outbuildings and storage sheds in the area. It was also late in the year, so it was starting to get dark around 6 p.m. So, as a result, every time I would see headlights go down our road, I would watch to make sure they weren't stopping on the property. One evening, I see a vehicle going very slowly down the road and come to a stop at the end of our driveway, about 120 yards from our front porch. The vehicle's parked right in front of a 60s pickup that I parked, so I think whoever it is might be looking to steal it, or just looking over the property. Whatever the case, I decide to put on my black coat and grab my rifle to go investigate. It's dark out, so I stay under the headlights of the vehicle so I can get close. I can tell it's a white van, but I don't see anything else suspicious about the van. When I'm about 50 yards away, the van backs up and turns into our driveway. I freeze as the headlights wash across me standing in the middle of my driveway, and I see the reflective FedEx logos on the side of the van. Needless to say, the FedEx driver probably messed his pants as he suddenly sees a dark figure standing in the middle of a field, in the dark, holding a rifle. Surprisingly, after I try to give a friendly wave and smile, he continues up the driveway to the house, and I get to explain the situation and we both have a laugh. So that's how I got to be the creepy guy in some FedEx delivery driver story. That just goes to show you, if you're going to be some creepy serial killer who stalks down co-eds in a cabin in the woods, then all you have to do is give a friendly wave and a smile. That should put them at ease and allow you to close the distance. Our next reply is from Lorbeck. I spent some time in the peat swamp forest of Borneo studying wild orangutan. We would go into the forest very early around 4 a.m. One morning, there was a clouded leopard on the trail that we used to enter the forest. It was just crouched there, watching us. We shouted, tried to act big, and one of the indigenous people we work with even got a slingshot and shot rocks at it. He was on purpose, just trying to scare it off. It stayed there for a good 5 minutes watching us before it slowly walked into the thick brush of the cleared trail. When we walked by, I shined my lights where it had walked to, and I could clearly see a pair of reflective eyes only 3 meters away, crouched, watching us pass. It was creepy, but also incredibly cool to see one in person for how critically endangered they are. Beneath that, I'm going to read this reply from Macrocanthorinkus. I hunt you. We can literally see you, bud. I hiding. Go away, cat. Shoo. You're not fooling anyone. I stealthy. No, go away. I am detected. I retreat slowly. You live this day, and I go elsewhere. There it goes. Hey, shine that light to make sure it actually left. I shine. I hunt you. Our next reply is from Coda43. I'm not sure if this counts because it's a farm, but when you live on a farm, you work on a farm, so I guess I'll tell it. I grew up on a farm, and in high school, I used to mess with my friends by hiding and making them find me. One night, my friend was over and we were waiting on this other guy. We see him pull up, so we take off running to hide. It's funny because they have to wander around somewhere that they're unfamiliar with, or go ask my parents and be told, too bad, you'll have to find her. It's like forced hide and seek. Anyway, this one night, I saw my friend hide in one of our buildings while I ran for the trees. I was hiding under some bushes, and I heard breathing. Like human breathing. There were no animals around. It creeped me out so bad that I ran out of hiding to greet my friend. I felt so uncomfortable for the rest of the night. Sometime during the night, my dad heard something and went out to investigate. In the morning, he discovered that one of our cows was killed and butchered. Then beneath that, Brancher asks, butchered as in people meticulously separated the meat out, or like something just started eating the cow? And then OP replies, someone stole the meat. So, OP, what you're basically saying is that someone snuck onto your property with a bunch of heavy blades, like butcher knives and axes maybe? Because, I mean, I don't know what sort of blades you use to butcher a cow. Like, I've seen butchers use, like, butcher's knives to actually chop meat, but that's once the meat's already off the cow. I would imagine the blades that you use to separate the meat from the cow are significantly heavier and sharper. So, OP was a teenage girl who almost stumbled across a guy who was equipped with heavy, sharp blades in the middle of committing a crime. OP, you might have been murdered that night if things went differently. Our next reply is from Lakewood Hiker. I spent several seasons working at a remote field camp in Antarctica, over 1,000 kilometers from the main station in McMurdo. Every once in a while, a scuba bird or Antarctic tern would accidentally end up following one of the small planes out to our camp. Once there, though, they'd basically be stranded with no way to get back to the coast. I'd get out of my tent some mornings and see a lonely tern circling overhead, knowing it was a dead bird flying. It was quite creepy. Along those lines, when birds or seals do die down there, it's so cold and dry that their bodies don't decay either. They essentially mummify. Outside of McMurdo's at Scott's Discovery Hut, there's still a perfectly preserved seal carcass from 1912 sitting by the entrance of the hut.
Oh my god.
This replies from Chief Boldface. I work on ships. There was one night that I was on a ship sailing through Alaskan waters, and it happened to be my first night ever seeing the Northern Lights. I can't believe how awesome it was. It made the sky clear, made the night look like it was dusk, and we were able to see clearly for miles. A few buddies and I hit the deck at about 1 a.m. to just gaze at it. An hour or so in, there were 6 of us on top, nearly the entire crew now. And then a big white spotlight shines at us. We were near land, but where the spotlight was above the water, and it wasn't low enough to be on a ship. This was very high up. It shined on us for about 15 to 20 seconds. Once the light turned off, we looked to see what it was, and we saw nothing. No trace of an aircraft or anything. A couple of minutes go by, and the same light shined on us. This time, it was on the other side of our vessel, above the mountains. Still, we were unable to see what it was. We all saw it, and we've never seen any aircrafts hovering above these waters, especially at 2 a.m. We don't know what it was. We think it might have been some sort of silenced aircraft. The military was probably doing drills or something. But anyways, that was one of the weird things that happened out in the ocean. And then beneath that, someone suggested it might have been the Hesselen lights, which are this strange light phenomena that happens in a very specific area in Norway. I'll show a picture of it now, and for those of you who are listening and not watching, it kind of looks like, geez, like this weird streak of light across the sky. It looks super unnatural. Our next reply is from Juicebox Fresh. I worked in a store once in a really small town that was always absolutely dead. A customer every hour or so, shifts all alone too, which I'm sure wasn't even legal, but hey. Sitting on Reddit as usual when I hear the door open. I look up and see the back of a man as he begins walking down the first aisle towards the tin foods, and he appears to be talking to someone on the phone. I think nothing of it and go back to Reddit. All of a sudden, I get this intense smell of soil and earth. I look up, and the man's approaching the counter, and he's wearing some kind of overalls, and his face and long gray hair and body is just covered in dirt. That's when I notice that he isn't on the phone at all, and he's just talking to himself in this absolutely bizarre tone. He sounded like a cartoon elf or something. He's just sort of murmuring and doing this really weird hee-hee sort of laugh. I was just frozen solid as he stood at the counter in front of me, and I'm thinking that I'm about to be killed when a policeman stormed through the door. He asks if I'm okay, which I don't respond to because I'm just in a complete state of what the F is happening. The cop tells the man to come outside, and the man just starts murmuring gibberish and saying the words legal over and over again. The cop comes and grabs the man and puts him in the back of the police car, and that's the last I ever heard of him. I have no idea who it was or what was going on, but I've never been so afraid of another person before. You know, when you just sense a bad, bad situation. I'm so grateful the police showed up when they did. Our next reply is from Kopioko Song. When I was 15 years old, I was doing my 4 a.m. newspaper delivery round on my bicycle. I was driving into the garden of this one subscriber when I saw 2 guys with flashlights looking through the windows of the house. I was a bit in shock and just said, "Good morning, guys." They were just as much in shock, and an awkward silence followed. I tried to break the silence by asking if I could pass by them to deliver the newspaper through the door. One of the guys said the person living in that house did something to his family, and they took that as an opportunity to get away in their car that was still running. When they were gone, I rang the doorbell of the house to tell them what happened, and that they should keep an eye out. Our next reply is from Prickly Heat. I was serving as a fireman for my nation's compulsory national service. Once, we were called into the forest to retrieve a body that was found hanging from a noose deep along one of the running trails. He had apparently committed suicide by hanging himself off a tree and was found by a few morning joggers. What's creepy was, we found a straw doll at the foot of the tree. It was stabbed with a few red bobby pins in the head and facial area. When we took the body down, we had to carry him a few kilometers out of the forest, and halfway along the journey, a previously unnoticed wound on his face started bleeding.
What?
One of my men swore that he was bleeding from the same spot as where the bobby pin was stuck on the doll, but we couldn't confirm.
Voodoo
As
crap.
we left the doll where the body was found for the police. We passed the body to the paramedics and booked our way out of there. That was r/AskReddit, and if you like this content, then check out my Patreon where I publish episodes that were banned from YouTube. Also hit the body was found for the police.
What's the scariest we need to leave now moment? Ooh, I know this is gonna be good.
Burt's Bees. Good for your lips, good for the world. Responsibly sourced, sustainably made.
Dear r/AskReddit, what's your most terrifying, we need to leave now, random rush of fear you felt? My car was stolen the very night I moved into my new house in a very good neighborhood. The neighbors had warned us that the neighborhood was being targeted at the time. They mentioned a woman around the corner that opened the doors for knockers in the middle of the night, and they attacked her and robbed her and almost killed her. We reported the car stolen and did the police reports when it happened. Well, 2 nights later, in the middle of the night, I hear a knock on the door, and they said, "Open up, it's the police." Well, since I'd heard the story about the other lady, I was suspicious and didn't answer. I grabbed my kids and put them in my daughter's room because it had access to the roof from the window. I called the police to say that 2 men claiming to be police are pounding on my door. They said there were no police in the area and they're sending a car. Turns out, these same guys stole the car and came back for seconds. I did get my car back because they brought it with. And the award for dumbest criminals of the year go to these 2 guys. Our next reply is from Sinful Ears. Years ago, my boyfriend owned a truck tire repair company. He stopped by a customer's house unannounced one day to try and get a check, as they owed a lot of money. When he came out of the house, he was pretty shaken up.
Burt's Bees. Good for your lips, good for the world. Responsibly sourced, sustainably made.
Dear r/askreddit, what's your most terrifying? Walked quickly away from the bear because I'm not getting eaten. I had to drag my friend along with me because he didn't understand why we needed to return the way we came from. Then Walt Skink replies to that comment. I remember when I was with my nanny once and we were driving down the mountain she lived on. A baby bear waltzed out into the road and stopped to just stare at us. She hit her brakes and just sat there. It was like a good 5-minute wait, but the cub finally moved on, but my nanny didn't move. I asked her why, and she pointed out the side of my window. Because of that. And I looked over to see big old mama bear meandering along after the cub. It was terrifying, but at least we were in the car, so we could make a quick getaway if we needed to. I like how the friend in the first story didn't understand why he needed to run away from a baby bear. Like, dude, come on, haven't you seen The Revenant? Our next reply is from Pound Foolish. I was riding my bike home from a friend's house when I was a young teen, over 20
Stranger
years ago.
Things.
We both lost track of time, so it was dusk when I left. I lived about a mile away. I was traveling down one of the last roads to get home when I had this weird feeling. So I turned around and looked back down the road, saw headlights pass, stop, back up, and turn on the road I was on. It was a pretty long road without many houses and no streetlights or anything. As soon as they turned, I bolted into the woods and hid pretty far in. The car slowly drove by and kept going. No idea what they were doing, but I didn't want anything to do with it. Our next reply is from Pale Gunslinger. Hurricane Florence a year ago. We planned to ride it out as we were on a hill and in an area where the winds would be bad. Mostly ignore the news, too. The night before, I got this huge pit of fear in my stomach and begged my dad for us to go stay with my sister a few hours inland. He fought with me about it, but I finally convinced him. We came back a week later to find a tree fallen into our house. The house full of water. A tornado formed in the woods behind the house and pushed the tree up a 45-degree slope into our roof and through our house. Now, I will always trust my gut feeling, no matter how stupid it seems. You mean you were attacked by a hurricane, a tornado, and a falling tree? And the only thing that saved you was your gut premonition? Dude, you're literally the main character in a Final Destination movie. Our next reply is from Cian Barak. I was walking in my old local park with my sister. We entered the park at about 3 p.m. and were hanging around until about 9 to 9:30. We saw 3 people all wearing somewhat similar outfits all the way on the other side of the park. I immediately noticed, but don't think much of it. We walked for about 2 more minutes, and I noticed one of them stopped and was staring at us. I immediately had a bad feeling and told my sister we should leave. She noticed and obliged. Later that night, there was word of a stabbing in the park, and the suspects were all the people we saw in the group of 3. Our next reply is from 20 Brink. I was camping with a friend in a backwoods camping area. Not very many sites, and they were all super spaced out. We'd already been there one night, had the site fully set up. We'd been hiking all day, the works. We drove into town to get some food, and when we were driving back to our secluded campsite, we passed a man walking out of the only road to our site. We both locked eyes with him, and I got a super creeped out feeling. He stared at us like he knew us and hated us, but we'd never seen him in our lives. When we got to our tent, we went inside, and everything we had in there was tossed. Our bags were dumped out, and our clothes were thrown everywhere. We quickly realized both our hunting knives were gone, along with a bunch of our clothes. We also realized it had to be that guy we saw. There were no other sites or hiking paths he could have been walking from besides ours. We jumped in the car and drove back towards where we'd seen him, but he was gone. We drove a bit further and found a common area where other campers were gathered. We sprinted down and asked, "Have any of you seen this guy?" and described him. The people at the gathering just stared at us and guy was still out there with those knives and that no one around us cared freaked us out so much. We packed up the car and ended our no way we're staying out in those woods one more night. This kind of sounds like the opening of a horror movie, but in this story, the car starts and the people are actually like, screw this, let's get out of here. Our next reply is from Deep Potato. I was
Horror movies be like, wait, immediate and threatening danger. Do I have an AR-15? No, but I'm going in there anyway.
I did make him ask twice. Then, when someone asked OP what happened, he replies, we booked it a fair distance away and called the cops. To their credit, they arrived in 30 seconds or so, and in total, there were easily more than 6 cars. The 2 lads got away, but were apparently caught a few weeks later, and the gun recovered. Our next reply is from Princess Jimmy. I was walking by a long stretch of road with no houses. There was a cemetery. A van with 2 guys in it stopped and asked me if I needed a ride. This was in the late 90s, so it's not like hitchhiking was illegal. I'm all, no thanks, I'm nearly home. They wouldn't budge. They kept following me with the windows down, kept saying, come on, just get in. At some point, they just stop, and they start getting out. I was just a teen, and they were clearly 20-something. I just took off running. I must have sprinted half a mile to get to an alley and hid by the nearest building near the road. I waited about 15 minutes before moving on to make sure they'd given up so they wouldn't follow me home. Then, a random person replied to that comment. Late 90s, early 20s too. I used to hitchhike in the evenings. The walk home was long if I missed the last bus. I usually got a lift of a middle-aged person or a truck driver when hitching. One night, though, some young guys picked me up. I got a weird vibe off them, and they had me sitting in the middle back seat, so I couldn't just jump if things got hairy. They were talking about using party drugs like speed, so I started talking about my drug use and how I was panicking because I could have Hep C. A block later, they said they were turning off, and this was as close as they could get me to home. I breathed a sigh of relief. This is kind of like, you know, those jungle animals like poison dart frogs. It's like, hey, you might kill me and eat me, but you'll regret it because I'm filled with poison. So, to creepy van guys, if you're planning on assaulting me, there's not much I can do, but you're gonna regret it later. Clearly, it worked. Our next reply is from Avolkateshvara. I was at a party my freshman year of college, and some seedy people were present. The night was getting very tense, but no fights or anything.
I love
As
this.
the night went on, it became very clear to me something was going to happen. I told my friend it was time to leave. No more than 5 minutes after we left, someone was stabbed, and the stabber was shot. Smart move, OP. When people go to a party to get shots, that's not usually what they have in mind. Our next reply is from some dirty punk. I was at a national park on vacation. The layout was kind of like a crater with a rim you can walk under almost all the way around. Had this major gut feeling of...
I'm watching r/. It's really fun.
Later that day, a lady was killed from kids throwing large rocks and tree branches into the opening. That sounds like a horrifying episode of r/entitled Kids. Our next reply is from Cat-Like Jeans. When I was a preteen, a strange man stopped and asked me for directions that didn't make sense. As I'm trying to help him, a van rolls up and the side door opens. I just booked it and never looked back. And then FT Throwaway replies to that comment. Man, I had a similar experience when I was 14. I was walking home from school when a creepy older guy pulled over his work van, got out, and was asking me for directions to a well-known local place. And feigning like he didn't understand what I was saying in an obvious attempt to draw out the conversation. So that alone set off alarm bells in my head. But then he kept looking around the whole time. And I knew he was about to try something. Some lady happened to be walking from her house to her car, so I yelled out, "Hey, Mom, can you come here and help give this guy directions?" Surprisingly, the lady actually came over, and as she did, she yelled something like, "Your father and your big brothers will be out in a minute. Are you ready to go?" He looked panicked, quickly got back into his car, and took off. Once he left, that lady told me she knew what was up and made sure I was okay before letting me use her phone to call the cops. Turns out, I wasn't the only girl he tried to lure/abduct. My faith in humanity was both damaged and restored that day. And when someone said, "That lady is a hero," which I totally agree with, by the way, she replies, "She really was. I'll never forget her." I'd expressed my gratitude to her more at the time. I still remember what she looked like and the house she lived in. I remember she had a son who had Down syndrome, and you could tell she was a very dedicated and loving mother to him, who was always keeping a watchful eye. The lady just knew instantly that something was wrong, and without hesitation, she backed me up. I will be forever grateful, and I hope maybe someday I can help someone else like that if they need it. This lady is the polar opposite of an r/entitled mom. She's like an r/heroic mom. Our next reply is from Vox Thomas. Definitely when my town got hit by the worst firestorm we've ever had in 2017, the Thomas fire. We knew there was a fire somewhere. Maybe another town. We weren't too worried. The power is beginning to go spotty, and the winds are howling outside. Then, my roommate gets a call from a friend on the other side of town. My house is on fire. You guys need to pack a bag. After the call was over, the power went out and stayed out. So we packed our bags, and I start to hear little plinks against the roof, almost like rain. But it isn't rain. It's just ash. Not 15 minutes had gone by, and I look outside. We lived by a large hill that was only 2 blocks away, and it was burning. It got there so fast. I got back inside and tell my roommates, we have to leave right away. This is when our neighbors start wigging out too. We had to then capture our 3 very scared and confused cats. It was so crazy to drive away and see only blackness ahead of you, but in your rearview mirror, only flames. OP, you get 5 out of 5 stars for saving your cats. Our next reply is from Horse in Your Pants. I was on a second date with a guy who wanted to stop at his house to grab something and invited me in. He was super hot, but I wasn't feeling comfortable with him for a reason I couldn't put my finger on. We get to his house, and it was just creepy. He was well off, and the house itself was gorgeous, spotless, and totally sterile. Nothing on the walls, every surface empty, no books, no CDs, nothing.
Okay, that's
I asked
weird.
how long he lived there, and he said 5 years. While he was in the kitchen, he did ask me to go into his room to grab something. Keys, I think, from the top drawer of his dresser. I got the coldest chill up my spine, and immediately stepped closer to the front door. There was no way I was letting him come between me and the exits. He asked me again to go to his room, and I laughed and said, no dude, I'm hungry, let's go. He asked one more time, visibly annoyed at this point, and I proceeded to pretend that I was a jerky, stupid girl, and made a fuss about being hungry, and what the heck is taking you so long? He was pissed. So I walked out of his house on the sidewalk and made him follow me. We got to the car, and I kept pretending to be a jerky, clueless chick, and demanded he take me home. He did, in cold, furious silence. Then, when he stopped the car in front of my place, he grabbed my face to kiss me goodbye. He bit my lips so hard I was bleeding, and he reached under my shirt and twisted my nipple.
Oh, ouch.
Got him off me, falling out my door, and ran inside to the sound of him laughing. I ended up with a bruised face and nipple, cut lip, and was scared that he knew where I lived, but I still feel like I survived a legit serial killer. Man, OP, I'm with you on this one. It sounds like he never intended you to walk back out of that bedroom. That was r/AskReddit, and
This one is called "What's the Creepiest Night Shift Horror Story?" Oh, by the way,
This oceanside Verbo is about to become the backdrop to an unforgettable vacation memory.
We're back. It's weird.
Oh my god, it's
But my sister showed me a video of the creepiest crap she's ever seen. I can't find it. But she had this picture where like the lights were going off. Like they were flickering and flickering and there was no one in the room or doing anything. It was creepy.
Welcome to r/AskReddit, where we have 2 Ask Reddit questions for you today. Our first Ask Reddit question is, what's the best joke you know? Our first reply is from Stambomb. An Irishman walks into a pub. What'll you have? The bartender asks. Give me 3 pints of Guinness, please, says the man. The bartender brings him 3 pints, and the man proceeds to sip them alternatively. The first one, the next one, and then the third one, until they're all gone. He then orders 3 more. Sir, says the bartender, I know you like them cold. You don't have to order 3 at a time. I can keep an eye on you, and when you get low, I'll bring you a fresh cold one. You don't understand, the man says. I have 2 brothers, one in Australia and one in the States. We made a vow to each other that every Saturday night we'd still drink together. So right now, my brothers have 3 Guinness Stouts too, and we're drinking together. What a wonderful tradition, the bartender says, smiling. Every week after that, the man comes into the bar and orders 3 beers. But one week, he only orders 2. He drinks them and orders 2 more. I know what your tradition is, says the bartender sadly. And I'd just like to say that I'm sorry that one of your brothers died. Oh, my brothers are fine, says the man. I just quit drinking. Our next reply is from LG Evil Lawn Gnome. A guy walks into a bar and says to the bartender, I'll show you something amazing for a beer. The bartender agrees. The guy pulls out a 10-inch pianist. 100,000 ducks at 5.7 pounds of duck dressed. Person had died. Well, needless to say, somehow he managed to get his old driving a train had been at prices. Foie gras, for example, goes for $12 a pound. But let's say the whole duck wholesale price is at $2 a pound. The bartender would come out of this with $1,140,000. Our next reply is from Sergeant Skillcraft. My all-time favorite to tell at parties. There was this man in Bulgaria. This to my family when I was like 11. It went over well. And then they discovered that her husband was a coroner and that he was passionately hugging dead bodies in the butt with
Oh my god.
So he gave his wife a decomposer bacteria infection. This is the threshold. I would normally not publish. I'll be like this. Oh my god, what the? Our next Reddit post is from Greatwood. I worked in a parking garage in the airport. I was cleaning the top deck and noticed about 100 ravens all over a truck with a tarp over the bed. I took my flashlight expecting something awful. I noticed as I got closer the smell and the ravens taking turns going into a hole they torn open and popping out covered in gunk. Some guy had left a broken down truck with a couple of animal carcasses in the back to rot. They had no November and it was April. So everything was just beginning to thaw and break down. Then someone asked, what do you do in such a case? And OP responds, I called my boss who called maintenance to get a crew out there. They had airport police come over and do an investigation to make sure there were no human remains. Some trophy hunter flew in, bought a cheap truck, caught what he wanted and left the rest for us to deal with. He didn't even bother to register or update the vehicle title, so the guy who sold it got a knock on his door from the cops. Our next reply is from Steve McQueen is here. I worked as an evening manager at a major Hilton property. I got a complaint from a bunch of guests about noise coming from one of the rooms. It turns out a drunken man was beating the bejesus out of his wife and had the door barricaded so he couldn't get in. I called the cops, and they had to get into the guy's room using the balcony from the next room over. I'm still traumatized by what I saw when they finally arrested him and got the wife out of the room. She was covered in blood. It was horrifying. And beneath that, we have this story from a Jeans Co. When my junkie ex beat the stuffing out of me in a hotel room, choked me until I passed out, then disappeared, I woke up to the desk clerk banging on the door telling me they were kicking us out or calling the cops to remove us. I sobbed through the door that he was gone and begged them to let me sleep and not let him back in. But they refused and kicked me out. I slept on a stone bench by the river a few blocks down the hotel and woke up covered in bruises and barely able to move. I'm so glad you guys went above and beyond to help her. I don't think I'll ever get over how they treated me when I so clearly needed help. And it was a pretty nice hotel too. I couldn't believe it was handled that way. I wish more people were like you. Our next Reddit post is from Flattered Pond. It was 3 a.m. in a popular Canadian coffee shop. There's this one old baker in the back who rarely interacts with me past a dirty joke or a dirtier ditty from his Navy days. Other than that, I'm bagels for the homeless shelter when I swear I see something out of the corner of my eye. It's behind me. I turn and then look down. There's a small child standing there. A native little toddler with a faux hawk staring at me intensely. I'm struck dumb with how absurd the situation is. How did he get behind the counter? I didn't hear the door open or see him come through the counter. I scan the storefront. No one. I yell for the baker in case he has a friend or someone visiting that lost their kid. He comes over and, like me, does a double take at the kid and is baffled. The kid starts muttering incoherently. I get him a glass of water and a donut hole, and the baker runs out of the store to do a perimeter of the block. I call the non-emergency line and explain I have a little kid with no parents. I can't get any information from the boy. He just mumbles and I can't make it out. The police arrive. The baker comes back and says that he can't find anyone else in the streets. The guy from the 24/7 corner store says he'll keep an eye out. The police try to speak to the kid and also get nothing but mutterings and half-hearted gestures. They take him away. I see the cops again for their morning coffee, and they told me the little guy walked several kilometers from the nearest reservation in the dead of night to my store. He had gotten into his parents' medicine cabinet and just walked out of the house. I'm floored. It must have taken that poor baby hours to get to me. Seeing him behind me like that in the dead of night still shakes me. It spooks me more than that guy who threw a pot of coffee at me. The woman who tried to stab me with a plastic spoon because I refused to give her a metal one. And the dude that waited around 4 hours hoping to catch me alone so he could teach me a lesson since I didn't have the flavor of bagel that he wanted. And then we have this reply from my See What's Nerp. I can imagine you standing there and deadpanning the line. I'm sorry, ma'am, but this is the exact reason why we can't give you a metal spoon, as she stabbed me repeatedly with a plastic spoon. Also, what I want to know is, what bagel is so tasty that someone's willing to murder over it? I want to try that bagel. Our next reply is from DC for MVP. I worked in an open quarry mine down in Texas. We had a storm where it rained an insane amount for hours. Being the night shift supervisor, I was in charge of tons of heavy equipment, including haul trucks, excavators, and bulldozers. It was about 2 a.m. when I had 3 haul trucks get stuck in the bottom of the mine, just spinning their tires endlessly. It was horrible. Since we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars of production per shift, I had to get permission to shut the mine down from the superintendent and relay that to the supervisors up in the plant that washes and dries the material. They wouldn't shut down just because I said so. I called him a minimum of 13 times that hour to get him to shut the mine down. He never answered his phone, which never happened since he always had his phone on. 4 of us were soaking wet and covered from head to toe in mud to the point where you couldn't even tell we were wearing neon green high-vis safety gear. We got the trucks pulled out of the mine after roughly 3 hours of using a combo of the dozers, loaders, and excavators to essentially build a new road from drier materials. The superintendent got in at 6 a.m., took one look at the mine, and shut it down for the day. Turns out, his phone charger came unplugged and his phone died in the middle of the night. He never even knew I called. And then beneath that, we have a similar story from DJ33. I've lived the IT version of this multiple times, where on-calls or management won't answer on time-sensitive issues. The upside is, I never got covered in mud in the rain. One night, I had to help a brass mill that runs 24/7 and loses $150,000 if they're down in just an hour. Their Wi-Fi goes down, but only to a quarter of the plant, and they have no idea why. But they have a metric ton of floor materials that run the machines that require the Wi-Fi to function. So the whole place is at a standstill because they're bottlenecked by those few machines. Their network team isn't answering. Their server team isn't answering. Their management isn't answering. The plant's been down for well over an hour. I eventually get a hold of an on-site maintenance guy who sometimes assists with basic IT tasks that we can't initiate remotely because he's the only one answering the phone. It turns out that section of the mill was serviced by an off-the-shelf Netgear router. I have no idea how that's possible, but he was aware of it because he has to go reboot it sometimes. I ask him to go do that and he calls me back. He calls back 20 minutes later saying everything's fine. The router, on top of being retail-grade trash, was just stuck in a random supply closet, which had a leak. Water was dripping directly onto the router. He took it down, dried it off, moved it somewhere else, and eventually the Wi-Fi came back up. I wrote a very strongly worded email that morning,
Oh.
More blood than I'd ever seen before, outside of a 75-mile-per-hour motorcycle crash. I don't remember how many doses of Crofab we gave him, but it was the hospital's entire supply. But trying to get him stabilized, arranging the helicopter transport to a bigger and better equipped facility, all the blood, those still weren't the worst parts. The worst part was when the patient lost control of his bowels. I will never, ever...
Bloody diarrhea?
I spent the entire time standing by the door with a battery-powered fan and a handful of gauze pads saturated with cinnamon oil, trying to reduce some of that smell. The doctor occasionally stuck her head out just so I could waft some cinnamon oil in her face. Yes, by some miracle, the patient did end up surviving. And as far as I know, he made a full recovery. But the blood, the smell, and just the shock of it all. Yeah, never underestimate a baby timber rattlesnake. And beneath that, S-Wheels asks, I may be mixing up my animals, but isn't most baby snake venom more potent than mature snake venom? Matt Highlander replies, more potent, no. But the babies haven't learned yet to regulate their venom output, so when they bite, they just inject everything they've got. As opposed to the adults, which usually keep their venom injection to a minimum. That was r/AskReddit, and if you like this content, check out my Patreon where I publish extra episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button, because I put out new Reddit videos every single day. Welcome to r/AskReddit, where we have 2 Ask Reddit questions for you today. Our first Ask Reddit question is, what's the best joke you know?
Alright.
Welcome to r/Let's Not Meet, where people have real-life encounters with child kidnappers and serial murderers. Most of my videos are focused on the humor side of Reddit, so this video is a little bit different. Let me know if you enjoyed this content and if you want to see more. I told a serial killer to F off. In 2006, I was a college student at ASU. I lived in an off-campus apartment on the ground floor, and it was a block off a major street here in Phoenix called Baseline. These details are important. In the summer of 2006, Phoenix, Arizona was plagued by 2 serial killers. One was the Phoenix shooter, who ended up being a team of 2 guys randomly shooting people. And the other was the Baseline killer, a rapist and murderer. Having 2 serial killers put the entire city on edge, and everyone was talking about it. I even saw articles in Time or Newsweek about the situation. So, the fall 2006 semester had just started. Now, you may have heard of this, but Phoenix is hot in August. It would get stuffy in my apartment, and so I'd leave the window cracked a little because the morning air is nice. The blinds provided visual cover. Anyways, one morning, a strange sound woke me up. It was the crack of dawn, 4:45 a.m., and the sun was just barely coming up. It was the sound of someone lightly tapping on the window. I figured it could be a bird or some branches or something trivial. Tap, tap, tap. After about 90 seconds of nothing, the tapping returned, and it was absolutely purposeful. I was positive it was a human producing this noise. I thought it was my boyfriend, who thought it was cute to try and scare me sometimes. I decided I'd be a bit of a brat and make him wait, but
Oh boy.
I said very loudly, "What the freak?" He sort of seemed taken back with my anger, but only slightly. The man I saw will be with me forever, or more specifically, his eyes. And the feeling they gave me were insanely creepy. Honestly, words can't do justice to how terrifying his eyes were. They looked like black orbs with no light in them. Absolutely predatory. When I see pictures of Ted Bundy or Charles Manson, that's exactly what he looked like. Even if you saw a picture of how they looked, it's different when you experience it in person. It totally floored me. Something about this man was profoundly wrong. He was crouched down like an umpire. He had on dark pants, a dark purple shirt, and a dark Nike hat. He had dark skin. I thought he was Hispanic, but later I found out he was a light-skinned black guy. You'll find out how I learned his name later. Anyways, after I yelled, "What the freak?" at him, he whispered to me, "Can I talk to you?" If you want to know how insanely creepy that is to hear, just whisper that sentence out loud to yourself right now.
Okay, I talked to you. Oh my god, that is really creepy.
Think of how that sounded.
Not joking. Oh my god, that is weird.
I later learned he would blitz tag his victims, and he probably had a gun. All that separated us was a mesh screen. Now, this is about a 3-second interaction.
That is creepy as hell.
It's the Super 7-Day sell-off at Denver Magic.
That girl almost died.
For only $569.99. Or check out the Summit Firm, just $237.49. Plus 5 years no interest and free shipping. Denver Mattress, the easiest way to get the right mattress.
Hi, folks. Just like you, I watch TV too much. And in the car business, when we try to do something new, we call that market disruption. All these internet companies that are clicking a button and you get a car, I've been doing that for 10 years, so that's not really brand new. And I'll take any trade, so that's not brand new.
Oh wow, we got obsidian.
How he pretended to be crippled to target his victim. I thought of my mom telling me to not be nice to strangers. Don't be afraid to be a jerk. My thinking wasn't as calculated as all that, but it was more than nano-processed information. So when he whispered that, I started yelling at him. Hell no! Get the freak out of here, douchebag! I shut the window angrily and locked it. I can't overemphasize how incredibly irritated I was that this person had the audacity to disturb my precious sleep. I laid back down and wondered if I'd been too mean. What if he needed help? But that didn't really make sense. Why would he be, like, tapping and whispering if he was totally in trouble? I decided he was a creep after all. I was too annoyed to go back to sleep, but I sort of laid back down. I told my roommate about an hour later, and she sort of jokingly asked if it could have been the baseline killer. When she said that, my heart sank. His face looked exactly like it did in the police sketches that were on billboards everywhere. The only problem was that the billboard showed him with dreads, and the man at my window had no dreads. Apparently, he was some sort of disguise artist who'd wear wigs. Updating the police sketch would have been a nice move, but they didn't. I called the Phoenix police, and the detective I talked to agreed that it sounded like his MO. The suspect would say something to throw off his target, and then he'd blitz attack. The detective said that my angry response probably made me seem like too much of a hassle, and moved on. The only problem was that I thought the guy looked Hispanic, and the detective said many witnesses described him as black. I thought they might want to come and try for samples or surveillance video or something, but I didn't hear back from the detective. My parents freaked out. They got us knives, pepper spray, and put up signs. Edit, some people asked me why I didn't get a gun. I can't remember why I didn't at the time, but I remember it being something I was looking to when my dad brought it up. We learned another tenant had complained that same morning. I never learned the details, but this idiot was apparently going around the Ding complex trying to find a target. thing about this story is that I had a really bad eating disorder at the time. And about 8 months after this happened, I got in solid recovery. I never would have experienced how wonderful life could be if the slightest thing would have changed that morning in 2006. I can't think of something more scary than a serial killer tapping on your window. That actually happened to me, and if it happens to you, just scare them right back. Don't be afraid to be downright rude to someone who's injecting themselves into your space. It could save your life if you're not afraid to throw your weight around and tell someone off. Trust yourself. You can still be a kind and generous person and still tell someone to F off.
Wait, a YouTube's
I honestly don't know what's crazier about this story. Is it that OP's life was saved because
What?
she woke up in a bed?
This channel gained 192 million subs in one day, and then disappeared. What the hell? I'm gonna be right back. I'm gonna go take a shower. I'll probably stream again.